1, 2, 3, 4.
Screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time.
It's my screen time too.
Screen time, screen time.
Hello, and welcome to It's My Screen Time Too, the podcast where two moms review the best and worst in children's programming, from Netflix reboots and YouTube shorts to Disney classics and Pixar blockbusters. We watch, you listen. Find out what you can tolerate watching for family movie night, what to avoid altogether, and what you'll want to watch alone voluntarily. I'm Katie.
And I'm Deborah.
And I have two kids. Jay, he's 8, and Kenny, he's 5.
And I have 3 kids. Tony is 13, and Libby and Nate are 10. And they are adorable, aren't they?
Generally true.
We both like to tell a quick story about how awesome or occasionally awful our kids are, because in addition to being witty and incisive pop culture consumers, we're moms too. Katie, what have your boys been up to this week?
Can I tell two really quick?
Please.
Okay, so one, when he was getting dressed for school this morning, Kenny was singing the Perry Grip song, It's Raining Tacos, but he replaced the word tacos with mommies, and it was very cute.
Oh.
So A+ Kenny. But also, I'm sure I have talked in this space before about the inside joke I've created with Jay about farting. Do you recall this?
I don't.
Okay. It's been a long running one because I once told 3-year-old Jay when his infant brother was born that it reminded me of when he was little and would stare up at me lovingly when I held him in my arms and fart.
Okay, this sounds familiar.
Because, babies, when they pass gas, they smile. It's sweet to see the smile, but, farts. I did not anticipate this inside joke running as long as it has. And now it involves actually looking at me on purpose, giving me this certain kind of very sweet smile, and actually farting.
Oh my gosh, how long do you think he'll do it? Like into his 30s?
I mean, I still laugh 75% of the time. The other 25% of the time, I'm like, maybe I've taught my kid an inappropriate lesson about how funny farting is. Because it's not always funny, and I'm a little worried that he has not fully grasped that he shouldn't do it in like a public setting. But as long as it's just the two of us in the house, I still think it's pretty funny.
He knows. I'm sure he knows. Oh, what a special mother-son bond you have.
I swear I didn't think of it when it was happening, but now it's real and smelly.
So I have a music-related one. In 5th grade in Minneapolis Public Schools, kids get to try band or orchestra.
Yay!
And so Libby got a clarinet this week. Nate got a baritone last week. And because they've had so many music lessons in other instruments, they're picking it up really easily. And they are so pleased and they are so self-motivated to practice. It's been the greatest week of my life.
Finally! Oh, Deborah! All
it's
of
so
your parental
gratifying.
goals are happening.
Yes.
I'm so happy for you and also jealous.
It's really great. And then, not to leave Tony out of it, he used to play the baritone, so he was able to help Nate a little bit with technique.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So let's talk screen time in the news.
Let's do it.
Okay. I picked out a recent Good Housekeeping article from October 2023, and which I picked out in print because the magazine came to my mailbox. Your online sleuthing discovered that Good Housekeeping 1 year ago printed the same exact article. WTF. I can barely even talk about the content of the article. Like, I want to reach out to the author and say, like, did you get paid twice for this?
Yeah. And also, have there not been any new developments in your research? Because let me talk to your funders.
I know. And there's so many people who want to write for anyone, magazines or otherwise. Like, they could have found another article. Good Housekeeping has reprinted the same recipe before. I have print proof of it.
Uh-huh.
So come on.
I know, it's
If
really
you want people
sad.
to subscribe to your magazine, like keep it fresh, keep it new, don't reprint things. Okay. So the article from last year and this year is Yes, It's Okay for Kids to Get Scared by Gail Cornwall. And the article title says it all. Like, should we be watching scary stuff with our kids or not? And it was a pretty interesting article because, like, my gut reaction is like, no, too scary. But there are some benefits to being scared. It can release endorphins, which can make you feel good. It can produce a similar neurological effect to meditation and exercise. What? It can help you bond with other humans that are going through the same thing. Like, it gives you a sense of solidarity with them, even if it's like fake scary stuff on the screen. Kids can learn to distinguish a real threat from something that just feels like one. Think about games like hide and seek or tag. They're at their core kind of scary, the article says, which gives you that like predator prey flee type instinct. And that is helpful to feel that feeling in a safe way. It can help kids control their anxiety. So I'm rethinking my whole approach to scary content, but there are the article cautions things to keep in mind. Like, you should steer away as a parent from showing or letting your kids watch extreme horror films or suicide plot lines. And for a successful scary experience, there's 3 things you need to keep in mind. Consent. You should never like make your kid watch something scary if they don't want to. You should give them a sense of safety and like an out. Like, if it's too scary, just turn it off. Don't like try to make them push through it. And adult scaffolding. I don't really remember what that one means. Oh, and kids have to like be old enough to be able to discern whether something is fake or not. So I'm rethinking scary stuff. How about you? Did this change your mind? What did you think about the article?
Well, it is worth noting from the jump that the majority of experts she cites in the article are not actually involved in studying children, that their comments are based on studies of adults. So that's
Mm.
not to say that their comments are invalid. It's just to say that we're dealing with a whole different set of neurological developments here.
Good point.
What was I going to say? Sorry, I got distracted because one of these experts works at a place called the Recreational Fear Lab, which is just such a great made up name for a thing.
Yeah.
I think I really go back and forth on this, but I like that it all kind of boiled down to a common sense, know your kids, know what they can handle, and respect that kind of piece of advice, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of definitely not pressuring them into it. So many instances where it's like, "Oh, you can do this. It's not a big deal. Just it's all fake." Like the idea that like kids can have agency over their own reactions was really nice to me.
Yeah. One way that we have approached scary scenes in movies, and I'm not talking about horror movies or Halloween movies. I'm just talking about like your regular old like Disney film conflict, because for a long time that was way too scary for my kids. But it's helpful to teach kids about just like the general 3-act structure that
Uh-huh.
most plays and films are built around. And I think genre films, because they're so formulaic, especially can drill that home. So that might be helpful. And someday you might have a kid who writes a really brilliant like English literature paper because they're so good at discerning like the structure of a novel. Anyway, I think there can be helpful things even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable.
And that is, I think, what the idea was behind so called adult scaffolding, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
it can be helpful in the moment to remind your kiddos that, like, you're supposed to be feeling this way right now. They're trying to make you feel scared and anxious, but you just have to know that this roller coaster is going to go down and you're going to feel better in a little bit once this part of the show is over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing I thought was interesting that hadn't really occurred to me, but really kind of is in line with a lot of what we talk about when we talk about co-viewing, is one of the experts she quotes in the article says, quote, "Horror films are often allegories of the horrendous things that people experience in real life, so parents should be prepared to address the trauma, grief, and injustice that inspired the themes of the movie." It just made me think of friend of the pod, Amy, and how she is so comfortable with the pause button when she is watching movies with her kids to like give context to things she's seeing on screen. And this was a good reminder that particularly when it comes to scary things, that can be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
The one tool that we've totally stolen from the podcast world when we're watching anything remotely scary is from that Grim Grimmer Grimace podcast. And at the beginning of every podcast, they say, if this gets too intense, just turn down the volume, count to 5, and then turn it back up and see how you feel. And if you still feel uncomfortable, you can do that again. So Kenny will vocalize when he wants to do that, when he feels like something is scary. And that means close your eyes. I'll turn down the volume all the way. Then we'll count to 5, and then you can open your eyes and we'll turn it up again. I'm glad he feels comfortable vocalizing when he feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's good boundary setting. Learning how to set boundaries. That's good.
Any other thoughts on the article?
No. I want to know what Good Housekeeping is going to reprint next month.
I know. Well, probably something about Thanksgiving and the importance of sitting down together for a good family meal, I'm sure.
Do we have any follow-up from our last episode?
Well, I was wondering if you had given any thought to which celebrities you might want to see shave their heads to play the role of Charlie Brown.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Love it.
I think she could really pull it off. And then she would make some goopy statement about how shaving your head makes your hair grow back thicker.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. And then she would probably have her hair like woven into some sort of throw blanket that she would sell on her website for $1 bazillion. Well, I also have a little bit of follow-up from our last episode. Well, it may have been 2 episodes ago. You were talking about Chris Harris's new book of poetry, and I was saying that I had never heard of him before, but we finally got I'm Just No Good at Rhyming from the library, and my kids are loving it. Oh my gosh, that poem about the dessert tummy is so great.
So good. It's such a fun book.
So thank you very much.
The Island where everybody's Toby.
Oh, we haven't gotten to that one yet. I've just been like opening at random.
Okay, that's a good one. That's another favorite.
All right, should we move on to the main event?
Spooky time.
Ooh, today we are discussing Haunted Mansion. Guys, we kind of didn't expect to be able to discuss this movie because we thought we'd have to see it in theaters. And then it was in and out of theaters so fast, but then it came out on streaming. Probably makes sense that it would come out on streaming in October, but we assumed it wouldn't be out yet. So we're talking Haunted Mansion, the PG-13, that's right, PG-13 Disney film that premiered at Disneyland in Anaheim on July 15th of this year, 2023, and was released in theaters in the U.S. on July 28th. It just came out on Disney Plus streaming on October 4th. And it clocks in at a whopping 2 hours, 3 minutes. That's not super long for a PG-13 movie. Just want you to be aware of the runtime there. It had a worldwide gross of almost $113 million, which is considered a total bomb, with a disappointing 34% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by Justin Simien, who is best known for writing and directing the movie and TV versions of Dear White People. Did you see these? I thought I remember you enjoyed the show.
I have not watched it, even though it was very acclaimed when it came out.
It really was. I missed it too. So it's a blind spot for both of us. The movie was written by Katie Dippold, who wrote the controversial all-female Ghostbusters reboot, and the delightful Sandra Bullock, Melissa McCarthy movie, The Heat. Did you see that one?
Yes, I loved that.
I know, that was funny. I think about that every time I put on Spanx. She, she also wrote several episodes of Parks and Rec, which means she was an encouraging pick for this movie. I had high hopes once I read her credentials. That said, this movie was in development hell for a hot minute. According to Wikipedia, when Disney first considered a new Haunted Mansion movie way back in 2010, Guillermo del Toro was attached to write and direct, which truly would have been a fascinating watch, albeit one I probably would not have liked.
Too scary.
Can you imagine the creatures? They would have had to do a total redo of the ride to like keep up with his creatures.
Yeah.
So Del Toro dropped out as director by 2013, but Disney still had his script for a few years and even apparently considered casting Ryan Gosling as the lead until it decided it was too scary and announced Dippold as the new writer in 2020. So they jettisoned all the Guillermo del Toro stuff. The movie, in case you are a Disneyland / Disney World neophyte, is based on a Disneyland attraction that debuted in 1969. After the success of Disney's 2003 Pirates of the Caribbean film, Disney was anxious to find similar success with films based on other beloved attractions. They've actually attempted to launch a film franchise based on this attraction before with Eddie Murphy's 2003 The Haunted Mansion, no relation to the current iteration. So that was in the thick of Eddie Murphy's successful run of family films, which included The Nutty Professor in 1996 and its 2000 sequel, Dr. Dolittle in 1998 and its 2001 sequel, and of course the animated Shrek franchise. I can see how Disney considered him a known quantity who would guarantee a hit. But despite Murphy's success with the other films, The Haunted Mansion was largely a flop and grossed only $182 million worldwide. It currently has a 13% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which makes the modern version look positively fresh. I pulled this summary from IMDb because I wrote this doc before I watched the movie, so here we go. A single mom named Gabby hires a tour guide, a psychic, a priest, and a historian to help exorcise her newly bought mansion after discovering it is inhabited by ghosts. Just a side note right off the bat, this summary implies that Gabby is the main character in the movie. She is not. The main character is, in fact, the tour guide, whose name is Ben, who uses the Haunted Mansion as a way to process his grief over his wife's death. Is that a better summary? Let's find out. Okay, why did we pick it? There were surprisingly few new releases for spooky season this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
We both really wanted to see this after catching previews in theaters this summer, but we were disappointed to see it come and go so quickly. So when we saw it was premiering on Disney Plus on October 4th, we of course could not resist.
So let's talk about our general thoughts around the concept and plot. Have you ridden the Haunted Mansion ride?
So many times. Since we just talked about this whole introduction of scary stuff to kids, it was really one of the first scary yet fun experiences I had of my life. I have
only been to Disneyland in my adult life once, and I skipped most of the rides, but I don't even recall Haunted Mansion seeing it anywhere. So I have no history with it. I have not seen the Eddie Murphy movie. Have you?
Nor have I. I kind of wanted to in preparation for this podcast, and I fully intended to, and I just ran out of time.
Yeah. Okay. Did you like it? This movie, though, the newest one.
I tried to approach it with an open mind, remembering how much I enjoyed the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which was also based on a theme park ride. So it doesn't mean that movies based on a theme park ride have to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
As the summary I read earlier implies, I just don't know that it knew what it was trying to be. It was like trying to be a found family story, but I never found myself connecting with any of the characters. I don't know. What did you think?
I had a very open mind because I really liked Jungle Cruise,
Oh yeah, yes.
also based
Mm-hmm.
on a Disney ride with no like plot. Like they made that all up. And I saw like several movies in the theater this summer, and The Haunted Mansion was always a preview. And so I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
I was willing, and I really like Lakeith Stanfield.
Mm-hmm.
And who isn't entertained by Danny DeVito? If you're not entertained by Danny DeVito, well, oh no, you're giving me a face.
I would argue he was the least successful member of the ensemble, but go on.
Yeah, but he's still funny. I don't know. So I think I liked it a little better than you did. But it was, I mean, it wasn't mind-blowingly good. So let's talk about the cast and the characters. Was there anybody that you particularly loved or hated?
Well, now I feel like this is a looking at you lovingly and farting moment, and I'm just gonna like poo poo all over something that you liked. I just think Lakeith Stanfield, the obvious headliner, couldn't carry it all himself. I did like his character's interactions with the priest, played by Owen Wilson,
Mm-hmm.
and the child that lives in the haunted mansion, Travis, played by Chase Dillon. I liked their interactions. I thought he had zero spark with Rosario Dawson and even less spark with Charity Jordan, who was supposed to play his deceased wife, Alyssa. So, to the extent that he was supposed to be the main character of the movie, I found it disappointing.
Yeah, the ending. Okay, turn down your volume for a couple of seconds if you haven't watched the movie. It made it seem like was supposed to be like a romantic comedy all along, and I
Yeah.
that was surprising at the end. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, structurally, it was really difficult. And I know this is not the structure portion, so I'll get back to that. Tell me, were there any characters that you particularly liked? Danny DeVito?
I liked Danny DeVito, but that goes way back to my childhood because I loved Danny DeVito movies when I was a kid. Like
Mm-hmm.
Twins was a big one. Tiffany Haddish plays a very great medium character. Like the character is entertaining and well written, and then Tiffany Haddish brings her moxie to that character in a way that only she can. And then Jamie Lee Curtis plays like a medium who's trapped in a crystal ball, and I liked her character as well. I probably could have watched a movie that was like the trapped Jamie Lee Curtis and the Tiffany Haddish solving the mystery of the haunted mansion.
Yeah, I think you're totally right in that all of the core cast members are very good actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
a lot of
they
big
were in
names.
this movie. I
Oh, and Winona Ryder was in it
Oh
too.
yeah, she was.
Smaller part towards the end, but that was fun.
Uh-huh, yeah, definitely. I can't lay the blame for my not liking this movie at the foot of the actors. They were, I think, all doing their best, question mark.
What did you think about the look of the movie? I mean, the house itself is a character, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of spooky spirits who are characters as well.
They were pretty faithful in bringing a lot of elements of the ride into the house. There was a particular moment where the characters were getting pushed out of the house in oversized chairs. And they did it in like a couple different oversized chairs with a couple different characters. And those chairs were definitely made to resemble the ride vehicles, which are black and kind of domed over your head. And they're called Doom buggies. Doom. You know.
Okay.
I loved the inclusion of the beloved hitchhiking ghosts, which are a much loved part of the original ride. It's like right at the end, you go through this hall of mirrors and it shows you in your cart with a couple of like holographic ghosts who are supposedly going to come home with you. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that that was an important part of the story. I also just liked the overall 70s vibe of the movie. Like everyone's outfits and hairstyles and just the color palette felt very 1970s in a fun way. I don't know. What did you
Mm-hmm.
think?
I liked the mansion scenes a lot, and like It takes place in New Orleans, which is very appropriate for a movie where there's like a lot of paranormal activity. I thought that the house was spooky without being over the top until a scene that involves like both quicksand and ferocious alligators. And at that point, the CGI was like a little too overdone for me. But overall, I thought it was great production value.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of those spooky specters age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, what did you think about the writing?
You mentioned New Orleans. Let me just start
Mm-hmm.
there.
Okay.
So, there are two major Disney theme parks here in the United States. I cannot speak to the international parks, but the Haunted Mansion in California, the original, is in New Orleans. The Haunted Mansion in Disney World here in Florida is not. It's like in New England somewhere.
Oh.
So, to the extent that the setting in New Orleans was important to the canon of the ride, I didn't really get that. And they spent a good chunk of time at the beginning of the movie talking about New Orleans' connection to the occult and to all things spooky and how death is celebrated in New Orleans. That's fine. That's all true. But then it had no place in the rest of the movie. It could have been
Mm-hmm.
set anywhere. If you're going
Mm-hmm.
to make the choice to have it set in New Orleans, use New Orleans, which they did not.
Mm-hmm.
And my overall thought about the writing was that I didn't get enough time with any of the secondary characters to connect with them. Why did you waste this time at the top talking to me about New Orleans? And then spend all this time right at the beginning with Ben being like, "Oh, he's a drunk tour guide now." When we didn't know who this guy was. It was not the best use of the time, the 2 hours and 3 minutes you were allotted.
Okay. I thought that the New Orleans aspect was like character building for Ben because he's very dismissive of the he just doesn't believe in ghosts at all until he steps over the threshold and steps back
Fine.
over and then is
Sure.
haunted.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. I was too preoccupied with the fact that if the whole point of this movie was, again, turn down your speakers for about 10 seconds because I'm going to give you a spoiler. If the whole point was that they were all going to learn to live together happily in this big haunted house, I just didn't feel any of those connections being formed.
That's fair. That's a fair criticism. I have a couple of questions about the script. Okay. So the main dark spirit that they're going after his last name is Crump. Do you think that was like a Dickensian play on Trump?
Now, that I do not know.
I'm not sure either.
In which case, wouldn't the mansion have been set in like a New York City high rise or something?
It should have been. Yeah. Okay. There was like a vanilla candle joke that came back a couple times, but that was like a missed opportunity for a runner. I thought it should have come back a third time towards the end.
See, I just lumped that with all the super weird product placement, not product placement, brand placement.
That was my other question for you. Okay. And it was all Tiffany Haddish's character. She mentioned Costco. She mentioned CVS. She mentioned Amazon. She mentioned Baskin Robbins. Is that even around anymore? That one made me question, is this like sponsored content or is this just like out of touch writing?
If it was SpawnCon, they didn't get their money's worth because you never saw them with products from those places.
But then I wondered, is this a new level of sponsored content integrated into the film? You know how sometimes you get Google Map directions that are like, take a left at the Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, did Starbucks pay for that? What is happening?
Can you imagine a world in which Amazon consents to pay for sponsored content in the same space as sponsored content for Costco, wouldn't Amazon have been like, no, you can only mention Amazon. Don't talk to me about CVS.
That's a good point. Was it just a weird quirk of the script?
It felt
So
that way.
strange.
Yeah.
So strange. Okay, I'm glad that you picked up on that too, though.
It was really off putting.
Yeah, and I don't know, we watched something really recently where you observed that the dialogue was gonna age it, the movie.
Oh, yeah. It was The Monkey King.
Yeah, and I think this would do the same thing because the whole movie could be a classic, but the those product placement
Yeah.
mentions take you out of the suspension of disbelief that you're in this haunted mansion with the
And especially
characters.
given the out of time wardrobe that everyone is wearing. Like, it does not
Mm-hmm.
look of this moment. Just shut up to me about your Amazon package deliveries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, what did you there wasn't a ton of music, but what did you think of the music? There was like a Zydeco New Orleans band at the beginning and the end, kind of bookending the film. And then there was like a long I think it was instrumental of a cover of the song Superstitious.
I was kind of disappointed we didn't get a full rendition of the classic Ride song, which is called Grinning Ghosts. Do you know
Why wouldn't they put that in there? That's
they
weird.
put it in a little bit. A little of that like
Oh,
Zydeco
okay.
flavored overlay you were hearing came
Oh, okay.
through. But Grinning Ghosts is one of two iconic Disney ride songs, the other being the Yo Ho Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me from Pirates of the Caribbean that features this like very deep bass voice of, I can't believe I know this, but I think it was Thurl Ravensburg or something. And just the fact that we were deprived of that beautiful rendition of Grinning Ghosts made me a little sad.
Why wouldn't they put that in? Disney owns all of that
I don't know, maybe they wanted to make it
content.
hipper. I don't know.
Huh, that's interesting. That seems like a missed opportunity.
Agreed.
Okay, what did you think of the structure and the length? It was over 2 hours, slightly over 2 hours.
Can I float a structural change to you and you tell me if in your screenwriting wisdom it would have struck a chord?
Sure.
Okay. What if instead of opening the movie with this thing about New Orleans and then a long exposition about Ben's romantic history, we had done like short vignettes of all six, was it six people?
Hmm.
Just to get a flavor of who they all were and what their deal was before they came together in the haunted mansion.
I like that because there's this assembling of the gang, which sort of like Ocean's 11. But yeah, you don't get the backstory to everybody. I would have liked a little more background on each person before they
Agreed.
arrive at the mansion. That
Agreed.
would have been very effective. And then I also wanted to see, like, because they all have to stay in the same room to stay safe from the spirits that come out at midnight. I would have liked a little bit more sleepover humor.
And there was a little bit of that, and those were great moments. I just wanted to
Hmm.
see more of that gelling of the team. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. It took me a little while to pick up on the fact that Lakeith Stanfield's character Ben was like the real main character. Because the previews made it seem like it was going to be more the mother-son thing, and I don't know, the kid didn't play a super I don't know, his part felt like he didn't even need to be in it sometimes. I mean, I know the plot hinged on him at different parts, but
The
it was
connect
it oh, sorry. Overall, it had the feeling like of somebody probably wrote a really brilliant screenplay and then it was like torn up and redone by a committee, which often happens because they're
Yeah.
like trying to make it work for focus groups, which focus groups don't know how to make a good movie.
Yeah, the connective tissue felt rickety, and
Hmm.
it was a shame because the previews looked really good, and it was definitely a classic example of them putting all their good material in the preview. What movie or TV show for grown-ups did you compare this to?
Okay, first I thought of the old Tom Hanks classic Money Pit.
Uh-huh.
Because, like, who buys a house sight unseen and then it turns into a disaster? It turns out a lot of people do that sometimes.
Do you
And
remember?
then can you believe I watched this? I watched the first season of American Horror Story. That is really what it made me think of
Uh-huh.
after watching the whole thing in its entirety.
I was just remembering last year's spooky season. You remember we watched that show about the ghost puppies on Netflix and the family
Was so
yeah,
bad.
and the
All
family
those cobwebs.
they just left the cobwebs there for like months. Like they're just living there with cobwebs. And they also just left the cobwebs here. But in this case, I don't blame her because it was legitimately quite scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help thinking of an actual horror movie starring Owen Wilson that came out in the late 1990s called The Haunting. I think it was one of a million adaptations of that book, The Haunting of Hill House, or I don't know what the book is actually called. It feels like 60 to 70% of every horror movie released is an adaptation of this one book.
Mm-hmm.
And this was that. I remember watching it in late high school, trying to prove that like I was cool and didn't hate scary things. Now I am old and I can admit that I hate scary things, but whatever. Owen Wilson was in it. Catherine Zeta-Jones was in it. This made me think of it. Were you able to cast the gritty HBO reboot? I kind of think this is a trick question because the cast was not the problem.
Yeah, I would have. Okay, you know how, like, I think it's Zillow. They have those novelty properties that you can rent. Like, you can rent, like, the Home Alone house
I
in a
think it's
suburb of
Airbnb,
Chicago.
actually.
Okay, Airbnb. You could rent, like, the Malibu Barbie house. So I would have the Stranger Things kids, who are now like college age probably. I would have them play college students who think it's fun to rent the Haunted Mansion from Disney for like spring break or something. And they go in like all skeptical and then they turn out that it's truly haunted.
We are just throwing out better ideas left and right in this episode. I did not even cast my gritty HBO reboot because I would be fine seeing this cast in a better movie.
Yeah, yeah. I would totally be fine seeing this cast in a better movie too.
Do you think it was better when we were kids?
I don't know. My kids really want to see the movie Beetlejuice,
Oh.
which I think the plot is similar. Like, don't the parents move and like the house is haunted?
Yeah,
I don't remember I don't remember the plot very well.
the house is haunted by Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, right? Cuz
Something like that.
yeah.
I think it might have been better when we were kids.
I kind of agree with you. I was trying to dredge up memories of my first haunted house movie, and it didn't occur to me, but Beetlejuice is probably up there. All I could think of was a 1986 Disney short film called Mr. Boogedy. I
Oh, I never
still
saw
think
that.
about that movie, and I'm middle aged now, so maybe it
Was it
was
really
better.
scary?
I don't know if it would be scary to an adult watching it, but to my child's eyes, yeah, it terrified me.
Oh.
Would you ever watch this alone voluntarily?
No, because I already did. I respected my children's boundaries. They said it was going to be too scary. I suspect they really just wanted to play video games more than watch a movie.
I would also not watch this alone voluntarily, but let's get into it. We're probably going to need a bit more than 10 seconds to talk about whether or not this is good for our kids. It's our second PG-13 review. The first was Barbie. This one strikes a
Hmm.
slightly different tone. So, what do you think? Good for kids? Not good for kids?
I think for the right age who's not ready for true horror but is interested in scary stuff, I think this is a good pick. That said, it's kind of a weird movie. There's like one child actor in it. There's not a lot for kids here
Mm-hmm.
because the enjoyable thing for me was seeing actors that I like play these roles.
Mm-hmm.
And like children don't have like a background in Tiffany Haddish. Like they
Yeah.
haven't seen Road Trip.
Well, who knows? Yeah, there's very little scaffolding for a kid unless you are a Disney family and they've been on the Haunted Mansion ride and really loved
Hmm.
it. If they have that attachment, then it could work, but I did think the PG-13 rating is probably apt because I think it would be too scary for my kids cuz I did not watch this with them either.
Yeah. What's the classic horror film that Jamie Lee Curtis is in? Is that Friday the 13th?
Halloween, I believe.
Halloween. Okay. I could see like kind of a funny departure, like if you have a kid who like, well, like an adolescent who likes horror stuff, you could be like, let me show you what happened to that lady.
Yeah, you could do like a triple feature with that Owen Wilson stinker I was talking about.
Yeah.
I think I'll keep this one on the shelf, but I do still intend to watch the Eddie Murphy one. And I feel totally safe watching that with my kids without pre watching it because I assume it's just goofier.
I assume it's funny because Eddie Murphy's hilarious.
Debatable, but should we move on to ratings?
I would give it a 3.5.
Oh, you're so nice. Two. What do you think? See it or skip it?
I don't know. See it?
Yeah, I know we're just supposed to say see it or skip it, but like if you're a Disney Parks person, see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, maybe skip it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for listening to this episode of It's My Screen Time Too. If you enjoyed our show today, please share it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or you can click those 5 stars on Spotify. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyScreenTime2 or send an email to myscreentime2@gmail.com. We would love to hear your YouTube suggestions, article recommendations, TV and movie suggestions, or just general comments. Our website is myscreentime2.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. And our theme music was composed and performed by me and my adorable children, and our podcast is produced by Katie. You can hear more from us on our other podcast, Spock Talk, where we discuss the life and legacy of Dr. Benjamin Spock. Tune in next time for more real talk about the movies and TV we watch with our kids because we have to and sometimes because we like to. Bye.
Screen time. Screen time. Screen time. Screen time.
Screen time too.